very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us today for the ISAS panel discussion titled Maharashtra Musings, an analysis of the Assembly election results. To discuss this today, we are delighted to have with us the following speakers. We have Mr. Girish, who's the Chief Editor of Lok Satta India. We have Mr. Sarthak, who is also an Assistant Professor at the School of Arts and Sciences at Ahmedabad University. And last but not the least, we have Ms. Mansi, who's the Deputy Director of the Print. This session will be chaired by Dr. Ronojoy. He is a Senior Research Fellow and the Research Lead, Politics, Governance and Society at the Institute of South Asian Studies, NUS. I shall now invite Dr. Ronojoy to commence this session. Dr. Ronojoy.
Thank you, Kanika. A very warm welcome to today's panel discussion on the Maharashtra Assembly elections, for which the results were announced 10 days or so ago. The ruling Mahayuti coalition, comprising the Bharatiya Janata Party, Eknath Shinde's Shiv Sena, and Ajit Pawar's Nationalist Congress Party, won a landslide victory in the Maharashtra elections. The Mahayuti, in fact, won a staggering 235 of the 288 seats in the Maharashtra Assembly, with the BJP alone winning 132 seats. Shinde's Shiv Sena bagged 57, and Ajit Pawar's NCP secured 41 seats. In contrast, the Maha Vikas Aghadi, or the MVA, consisting of the Congress, the Uddhav Thackeray, Shiv Sena, and the Sharad Pawar faction of the NCP, could only win 46 seats. The Assembly election results represented, in fact, a huge divergence from the 2024 general election result, where the MVA won 30 of Maharashtra's 48 parliamentary seats, and the vote share of both the competing coalitions was around 44%. However, in the Assembly election, the Mahayuti opened up a 14% lead, a turnaround of the kind rarely seen in Indian politics, given that only a few months separated the national and the Assembly polls. Indeed, none of the explanations that have been put forward fully capture the scale and extent of the reversal of the general election results, and that's something I'm sure we'll dwell on. As has been the BJP's political strategy since 2014, the party was quite successful in putting together a winning social coalition in Maharashtra. According to a CSDS Lokniti survey, a majority of the upper castes, the Marathas, the Kunbis, the remaining other backward classes or OBCs voted for the BJP, along with a fairly significant chunk of the Adivasi and scheduled castes. The MVA got over 50% of the vote share only amongst the Adivasis and Muslims. In addition to getting the caste equations right, the Mahayuti government also took steps to turn the narrative in its favor post the Lok Sabha election. Before the Assembly election, it in fact rolled out measures, most famously like the Ladki Bahini Yojana, the Beloved Sister scheme, which provides a monthly rupees 1,500 direct cash transfer to roughly 25 million eligible women in Maharashtra. According to the CSDS Lokniti survey, 80% of the eligible women signed up to avail of the scheme. Of these, 54% voted for the Mahayuti. Of the overall women's vote, 50% voted for the Mahayuti and 33% for the MVA. Agrarian distress had played a part in the MVA's strong performance in the general elections. However, in the Assembly election, it seemed to have failed to capture this issue. This might have had something to do with the several central schemes for farmers, including cash handouts and crop insurance. According again to the CSDS Lokniti survey, nearly half the beneficiaries of these schemes might have voted for the Mahayuti. Another aspect, of course, was the well-oiled party machinery, particularly of the BJP, which played a critical role. But it also seems the overwhelming victory, that is, has also reaffirmed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's popularity. There had been some talk of voter fatigue with the Prime Minister in the 2024 general election, but many voters seem to have mentioned the Prime Minister as an important influence while casting their vote. Despite the dominant performance of the BJP, the party in fact won 132 of the 149 seats it contested, which works out to a strike rate of nearly 90%. The Mahayuti's government formation has not been that easy. The Chief Minister's name has not yet been announced, though it is widely believed that Devendra Fadnavis, a former Chief Minister and the face of the BJP in Maharashtra, will get the post. The delay has reportedly been due to the demands of Shinde, whose Shiv Sena won 57 of the 81 seats it contested, and the controversy of the demands have been regarding cabinet berths. The BJP will, in fact, elect its legislative leader, party leader tomorrow, followed by the swearing-in ceremony of the government on 5th December. That's the day after tomorrow. Whatever the composition of the government, the Maharashtra verdict has been a phenomenal boost for the BJP and definitely a very serious setback for the Congress and the opposition. We have a great panel today to parse the Maharashtra results. May I now turn to Mr. Girish Kuber to give an analysis of the overall contours of the verdict and why perhaps the results were so one-sided, especially when compared to the general elections held only a few months earlier. Please, the floor is yours, Mr. Kuber.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'll not go into numbers, who won how many seats and all that, but there are three distinct points. Those are worth taking note of. So one by one, I'll get into that, and then we will talk about the politics of it. The most important thing this election has shown, and which is kind of a worrisome factor for all the democratic structure we have, is kind of in Hindi, if it is to be used, labharthi karan, converting voters into beneficiaries. So Maharashtra was the latest entrant on that scheme of things. It started in West Bengal, then there was Tamil Nadu, then it happened in Madhya Pradesh. So in this form, what government does, it rolls out cash or some benefits to voters and expects electoral support in return. Actually, it shouldn't be the case in democracy. It's part of the government. It's job of the government to do such thing. But as of now, as things stands today, and before the next election, which is in Bihar, we can see there are something like 16 states which are into this cash handouts. There are out of 16, 14 are women-centric. So you can imagine the importance of converting voters into beneficiaries. Labharthi Karan is a major danger. And as of now, as cited by various economists, it turns out something like 2 lakh crore. It's 2 trillion rupees are being spent on this cash reserves. This cash dole. This is absolutely strange, because when government doesn't have money to pay school teachers or Anganwadi Sevikas, those who go door to door in rural areas for giving primary health care, basically women. Anganwadi Sevikas are women down the ladder of the administration, where those are hired for local vaccination and all health related services. Those Anganwadi Sevikas, again, and then the Bhaginis, are agitating for rise and bonus, and they are paid paltry sum of 5,000, 6,000 a month. So against that backdrop, we have this huge cash handout, which eventually proved very important in the electoral outcome. Because as of now, for this 2 crore women folk, which is part of this Ladki Bahina, government is something is to make it, to raise this amount to 2,100 per month. So imagine something like 60,000 crore just for this cash handouts, where there is no audit, there is no kind of a criteria based, for the Ladki Bahin, current Ladki Bahin scheme, the government initially announced various criteria, and when it realized it may go politically wrong, it diluted norms to an extent that, Lok Satta we wrote, the only criteria now remain is that the beneficiary has to be women. Everything else has been completely removed, and that's a fact. Even those who are in income tax bracket, whoever applied, name gender women, and they were granted. So it's not going to go with this kind of thing. The state is, I don't have to go into the number, but 1 lakh rupee, 1 lakh crore deficit, 9 lakh crore debt, and 60,000 crore on this particular scheme, where the entire state's health budget is 20,000 crore. You can imagine the size of these handouts. That is one part. Second is again from the India's federal structure. Does it sound end of regional parties? Because that is again a worrying thing, because except two large state and Jharkhand, like smaller ones, there are no big or statewide regional parties which can take on the BJP. Earlier it was Congress that finished regional parties, and regional parties finished Congress, and now BJP is here to basically neutralize all regional forces. Because under BJP scheme of things, RSS scheme of things, there is just only one nation. It doesn't believe in regional identities, which is actually important for India's federal structure. So, except say West Bengal, where Trinamool Congress is standing tall, and DMK, rest of the parties either have, and Jharkhand is a small exception, either are part of the BJP culture, BJP total political yuti, or these two are just only there to challenge the BJP's hegemony in their respective area. What has happened recent past is that BJP has developed a very unique style of political management. It first enters in area where it doesn't have a presence and finds a nice friend, alliance partner. So you had Akali Dal in Punjab, you had a Maharashtra Gomantak Party in Goa, and there was Assam Gana Parishad in Assam, Biju Janata Dal in Orissa, AIDMK for that matter, it tried in South. So it will find a good stepping stone, and eventually the way it structures itself on religion and as well as the caste combination and the social engineering, it will remove the stone, and then the stone will not even realize where are we. So as of now, there are half a dozen parties we can easily cite. They have completely disappeared. So it's kind of a Bermuda Triangle, having a friendship. So in political jargon, it is said it's better to be BJP, opposite of the BJP than BJP's friend. So generally, it's like it ends, it eats its friends first, and that's how Shiv Sena must have realized by now. The way it started in 1985 in BMC elections, and not many know the Hindutva phase of the BJP. It was borrowed from Shiv Sena. It was first Bharatiya Thackeray who actually gave a call for Hindutva, and then the famous slogan "Garva se kaho Hindu hai," and it became sticker and hoardings and kind of stuff. And eventually he was barred from getting into electoral because of bringing religion into politics. I mean, this is the same India where now entire election machinery has been completely religionized. The religion has become a mainstay. So this is the second feature now. And now there is another angle to it. I use the word, it sounds initially contradictory, but in the recent scheme of things, the way BJP is driving it, I describe what happened in Maharashtra, or the strategy adopted by BJP is saffronization of socialism. Socialism, obviously, a derivative one can look at from Marx and Engels and then Lenin and the left ideology. But the way BJP has adopted it and tweaked it with caste and social groupings, So this has actually worked for the BJP. This is something, again, if it is becoming a trend, the entire politics will change. Like, for example, ahead of elections, what I mean by saffronization of socialism, it's just not only the socialism by the saffron party. It's not. The way it combined communalism with socialism. What it did ahead of elections, it came out with a notification. That is, the state government came out with a notification which said sub-groupings of SCs, sub-classification of scheduled castes, communities. So what does that mean? So there are, as a political bloc, Dalits are seen pro-Congress. But by doing this, and again, thanks to some Supreme Court judgment, which it used to get into this sub-classification, it tried, we can say successfully because of the electoral outcome, it successfully divided Dalits into Hindu Dalits and Bauddha Dalits. So further fragmentation of these communities, and if it works the BJP way, it will obviously have a serious impact on those parties or political ideologies left of the center. So this three combination, three points stand out in Maharashtra election, and all three are important. It can be we all can discuss in detail, micro detailing can be done. But I thought these are the three important points I should highlight first, and then hand over to co-panelists, because there is so much to discuss and analyze. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Girish, for that. The sort of big picture analysis, and singling out three features, which of course we can definitely come back to and talk about a bit more. Could I now ask Manasi to talk about her experience, fairly extensive, of covering the election campaign, and what kind of clues it might have provided for the actual result that we saw. And before she begins, a quick reminder that the audience can send in their questions in the the Q&A function, and I'll once the panelists are done, I'll pose these either individually or in groups to the panelists. So the floor is yours, Mansi, please.
All right. Thank you, Ronojoy, for inviting me here. And thanks a lot, Girish sir, for the opening address. It's always a pleasure listening to you. So I traveled extensively across Maharashtra before the Lok Sabha election and before the Assembly election as well. And there were a string of things that you could see the Mahayuti government doing between the Lok Sabha election and the Assembly election now. To what extent would those moves actually benefit the government or even whether they will even benefit the government to begin with was a big question mark until I started traveling for the Assembly election. And bit by bit, I kind of started thinking that yes, Mahayuti has kind of managed to recover some of its losses in the Lok Sabha election. Even in my interactions with BJP leaders or even Shiv Sena leaders, so they seemed fairly confident of reaching somewhere around the halfway mark. Their optimistic estimate, however, was about 170 or 180 for the Mahayuti. That was the general expectation. So I don't think even the ruling alliance expected this kind of a landslide victory that they have received in this election. My understanding or my reading of this is also perhaps that somewhere this kind of a decisive sweeping mandate was probably given by the Maharashtra electorate simply in favor of stability. They voted overwhelmingly for stability. But coming back to that, what the Mahayuti government did in those 6 months to offset some of its losses in the Lok Sabha election, they actually did a clinical analysis bit by bit of where they went wrong and tried to address those issues. So I'll go, issue by issue. So one thing that hurt the Mahayuti government in the Lok Sabha election in the northern Maharashtra region, northern Maharashtra is the onion growing region, was the fact that the center had impacted a ban on onion exports. There was a glut in supply and prices had fallen. Although the center did roll back the ban in May, just before the constituencies in North Maharashtra went for vote. But, the farmers were already reeling under distress. Now, what happened between then and now? There were a multiple. So basically, the ban on exports was already lifted. Multiple leaders went to the northern Maharashtra region and time and again apologized for impacting such a ban. Promised that they will not have such hasty policies in the future. The minimum export. Also, what helps here is the fact that the center was on board with all of this. They had the center's support to get these kind of policies passed. So the minimum export price on onion was lifted. The export duty was cut from 40% to 20%. And in the looks ahead of the assembly election, you could actually see onion prices starting to rise and farmers having pretty much stabilized. Similarly, what happened in case of the soybean and cotton farmers? Now, soybean is grown, in Marathwada districts and in some Vidarbha districts, same as cotton. So soybean, again, the farmers had this issue of not getting remunerative prices for their produce. The center had a policy where they agreed to buy 13 lakh metric ton of soybean under the price support scheme. Even then, you could see ahead of the assembly election that the soybean prices were still a big problem for the Mahayuti government. When we went on the field, farmers were still unhappy. This is about a month before the election. Their main grouse was that yes, we have this minimum price support scheme. They've agreed to buy back soybean. 13 lakh metric tons is a large amount, but at the same time, their moisture content norms do not work in our favor. Our soybean has higher moisture content. Now, in 2 weeks before the election, the moisture content norms were relaxed at a local level. And that helped, that brought about the swing in soybean producing regions. From the state government side, there were relief packages being given to soybean and cotton farmers. Then the other factor that hurt the Mahayuti government badly in the Lok Sabha election was the Maratha agitation. Here again, Manoj Jarange Patil's decision not to field candidates and also his one statement that elections cannot be fought on one caste alone really actually helped the Mahayuti government here. What also helped that the BJP took a lot of efforts at stitching its OBC voter base together, not just in Marathwada but across the state. Where multiple leaders told me that they have been having micro OBC meetings, so small meetings of smaller OBC caste groups to identify their concerns and what can the state do about them to kind of get them to rally behind them. In Marathwada particularly, there was a challenger that rose to Manoj Jarange Patil, who was Lakshman Hake, an OBC activist. And he kind of consolidated the OBCs across caste groups, and that also that helped Mahayuti in Marathwada to a large extent. In fact, Hake, now I hear, has been saying that his efforts have been instrumental in helping the Mahayuti and he deserves a cabinet berth in the government. And so why the reason they couldn't really have this kind of OBC consolidation in the Lok Sabha election was because OBCs themselves were very dissatisfied at that point of time with the government because there was this larger fear of the Marathas being given reservation through their quota as Kunbis. And in fact, you could see a cabinet leader like Chhagan Bhujbal himself standing up and leading that kind of agitation for his own political gains. But what didn't work for the Mahayuti in the Lok Sabha election, they course corrected and it gave them results in the assembly polls. Then the whole Hindu, attempt at consolidating the Hindu vote. It's not that this had not happened before the Lok Sabha election. Because if you see, there were a string of rallies that were held by the Sakal Hindu Samaj, the Hindu Jan Akrosh Yatras, as they called them, where BJP leaders joined the platforms and one after the other they spoke about land jihad, love jihad. And so, I mean, all of those efforts were made even before the Lok Sabha election. But there was a nuanced difference where ahead of the Lok Sabha election, it was almost like we've already showed you that we are the party for Hindus. We have opened a Ram temple in Ayodhya. We deserve your vote. And we know that we've done a lot. We are going to cross 400. There was that bit of overconfidence in their stride. And that actually, worked against them because it consolidated the Muslim votes instead of getting more Hindu voters to come out. So this time they course corrected one by rhetoric by saying that the opposition MBA got the kind of votes that they did only because of minority consolidation. They pointed to how Uddhav Thackeray got the seats that he did mainly in Muslim dominated areas. And the second thing that they did was leader after leader went to, Hindu pockets and spoke about, this whole concept of, they called it vote jihad, but they spoke in terms of data, like giving example of, say, a Dhure Lok Sabha constituency, where there are 6 assembly segments. 5 of them overwhelmingly voted for the Mahayuti government. The 6th, Malegaon, which has a dominant Muslim population, voted for the MVA, and that reversed the gains of the Mahayuti in the other 5 Lok Sabha election, in the other 5 assembly segments. Or similarly, you look at the Mumbai South Central constituency, where BJP leaders went to people and spoke about how it's only the Mankur Shivajinagar constituency and the Dharavi assembly segment that has actually given an edge to the MVA. And had those two segments not voted the way they did, then the Mahayuti candidate would have come to power. So the fabric of, and this is where this whole "Ek hai to safe hai" kind of a slogan, made sense for the Hindu voters. That if they don't come out to vote in large numbers, then they are going to be outnumbered and outvoted by the Muslim electorate. So it did have some impact on the ground. The BJP also used the Sangh Parivar to a large extent for this purpose, where members of the VHP, Bajrang Dal, not to mention the RSS, I'll come to that later, but went from door to door and spread this message of you need to come out in large numbers because you have this example of Dure, you have this example of this particular constituency. BJP leaders had Sant Sammelans on the ground. I actually went into one of those Sant Sammelans, but they kicked me out just before it started. But I kind of had a glimpse of the kind of people who were present. So this one was happening in Mumbai, and they had called the heads of temple trusts across Mumbai and major saints across Mumbai. And they were not just Hindu saints or Hindu heads of religious institutions. I actually could spot a Sikh there as well. There was a Parsi as well. So it was a movement to get non-Islamic, non-Catholic, heads of religious institutions together, and they were all given booklets. So the booklets had 14 points. So your typical suspects of love jihad, land jihad, vote jihad. Then there was a point on how Hindus are at a social, economic, and political disadvantage because of the illegal immigration of Muslim, with statistics and stuff. Then there was a point on how at the grassroots levels, demographies of entire villages are changing because Muslims are taking over local level jobs like your ironsmith or your barber and the vegetable vendor. These were jobs that were earlier held by Hindus. Now they are being held by Muslims. So that was kind of the drift of the whole campaign there. Then the RSS's support, which actually helped the BJP big time, I think, this time, because I remember speaking to one BJP leader going back to my previous point about this Hindu consolidation, another observation that I made in Vidarbha when I was there, a lot of temples outside had banners that had been put up, which said that this temple is safe now, but if you don't vote in this election, we cannot guarantee this temple will be safe in the future. So there was this subtle messaging also that was happening on the ground. Going back to the RSS, so one leader that I was speaking to basically gave me this example of how the BJP RSS relationship is like that of a father and son. So a father may tell a son that please don't do this. I don't think this is good for you. The son doesn't listen. The father tries telling a second time. The son doesn't listen. Then the father says, okay, fine, do what you want. Now I can't tell you, keep telling you beyond the point. So the son does what he wants. The son actually gets into major trouble. Then the father says, okay, I'll come and help you. So that's exactly what happened in the Lok Sabha election when the BJP's performance was beyond lackluster. The RSS functionaries in the month of June itself had their first meeting with BJP leaders and key functionaries across Maharashtra, where there was Atul Limay, who was a senior functionary, Mr. Arun Kumar was present, and they devised a strategy of what went wrong and what you can do. So BJP leaders in private conversations describe the role of an RSS as, I mean, not just going door to door and spread the message of the BJP, but it also kind of acts as almost like an intelligence input unit where they talk about why not this candidate and why this candidate bases several factors, the caste, demography. The RSS comes up with strategies for disaster control at some point of time when the narrative goes astray. So this is, this is the extent to which BJP leaders locally rely on the RSS in Maharashtra, and RSS rallied behind them. That really helped. Then the other narrative that the MVA had succeeded in during the Lok Sabha election, especially in Mumbai and the surrounding areas of the Mumbai metropolitan region, is this fear that businesses and investments are going away to Gujarat. So again, this is one point that Mumbai-based Mahayuti leaders, not just the BJP, Shiv Sena, and even Ajit Pawar leaders like to highlight about the FDI numbers for this year, last year, this year, 52% of FDI came to Maharashtra. So this is, I mean, their narrative was stitched around all the points that hurt them in the Lok Sabha election. Whereas the MVA actually did nothing to bring about a new, discussion point or a new narrative to the table. You could see the MVA constantly in a mode where it is reacting to the Mahayuti government's decisions and statements. And you could at Congress rallies, you could still see Rahul Gandhi talk about the constitution, and multiple Congress leaders in Maharashtra have also in confidence said that why will the topic of a constitution work in an assembly election? When the rival side is not even talking about, it's not even talking about like a 400 par sort of a thing, that they know that we are going to come back in an overwhelming majority and we're going to do something that's going to risk your life or risk the constitution being changed. Why will it work in the assembly election? Then even the MVA didn't seem well coordinated within itself as well. In the Lok Sabha election, the impression that the voters got was MVA was able to transfer its MVA parties were able to transfer their votes to each other much more effectively than the Mahayuti leaders were. In fact, there were seat sharing troubles within the Mahayuti that constantly came out in public, and they couldn't decide on their candidates. For some later phases of the Lok Sabha election, candidates were decided as at the 11th hour, literally just about 10 odd days or 2 weeks before polls, which left the candidate no time to campaign. So you could that discord which you could see in Mahayuti in the Lok Sabha election and unity in the MVA was sort of reversed in the assembly election. Not to say that the Mahayuti did not have seat sharing troubles or they didn't have rebellions. They had enough rebellions and stripes on their hand. But they were careful enough to not let them play out in public as much as the MVA was. Within the MVA, you could see leaders like Sanjay Raut and Nana Patole literally having this mudslinging fight every day, and the media would lap it up. And you're giving content, so the media is playing it up. So as a result, the differences within the MVA were much greater than they were in the Lok Sabha election. And even with regards to the welfare schemes that the Mahayuti government announced in the run-up to the Lok Sabha election, the opposition kind of seemed like they weren't sure how to counter, this volley of schemes that the government is announcing. Because initially it seemed like, oh, this is coming out of desperation because you're not confident of winning the assembly election, so you're throwing money at the voters in terms of schemes. Then, they started talking about how it's hurting the Maharashtra finances. And then at the end, you release your manifesto and you have similar schemes in your manifesto without really specifically talking about how you are going to do things differently so that it doesn't cause a fiscal strain on the state's coffers, or how does this not show desperation on your part, but it showed desperation on their part when they released those schemes. So there were the narrative was not coordinated at all on that particular front. So these were some of the factors that I observed, which led to the kind of verdict that we've seen. Having said that, nobody really anticipated such a sweeping verdict in favor of the Mahayuti government, and the repercussions of it are going to be, quite severe, because while there is stability without a sizable opposition, and that doesn't speak too well for democracy.
Thank you, Mansi, for the fine-grained analysis of the various issues that marked the campaign, both of the Mahayuti as well as the MVA. Finally, could I now turn to Sarthak, who has done extensive fieldwork in Maharashtra. He will focus on some of the issues that have sort of characterized Maharashtra politics as well as been linked to an earlier phase of Congress dominance, for example, cooperative politics, dynasty linkages, and patronage structures, and discuss their relevance or irrelevance in today's contemporary politics. Over to you, Sarthak.
Thank you so much, Ronojoy, for inviting me to this panel, and it is always great to hear Girish and Mansi, whose columns I have been also reading very closely during my field study in Maharashtra. I think much has been already said by both the panelists, so I'll be precise. I think there were a few narratives which came out in the initial analysis when everybody was trying to, put their heads around this verdict. And one of the things which I heard was end of dynasty rule, end of dynasty linkages, end of dynasty candidates. I think that is something which is not really happening on the ground, because that's a very distinctive feature of Maharashtra politics, that even if we look at the CSDA survey, which says that there are around over 50% of the voters who prefer a candidate over a party. So the identification with a candidate, or a gut, like factional politics, that is something which is very dominant feature of how politics in Maharashtra is. Maharashtra cha Rajkaran, they say. So politics in Maharashtra is centered around personalities, whether it is Sharad Pawar, or whether it is the Nimbalkars or Chavans, or several other families, which have been dominant families, and which have also entrenched their the domination over a period of time. And I've also written about this, about the political elites, and I think this analysis, which was done in the 70s, still holds partially true uh, about the domination of elites, who are not only able to capture political power, but also capture the modes of regional political economy. So by that I mean, institutions of political economy, in the sense of sugar cooperatives, or further adapting to the new transforming economy, and branching out into education, institutions, or even credit cooperative and other cooperative societies. Plus, now that transformation we see in terms of expansion, or modification of the business interest into agro industries and real estate infrastructure. And that kind of adaptability we are seeing, district after district. We'll find that there are at least one or two actually such influential political families which are in opposition to each other, and the entire politics of the district or the constituency revolves around them, either in opposition or in power. So that is something which is which I still find which has not really completely changed, and not completely overall. Of course, those dynasty politicians, many of them have switched from the Congress to the BJP. And prime examples are many of them. People can just find out the newspapers to see the people switching. One figure that I would like to put in here to emphasize why I'm saying this point is, in this last assembly election, according to our analysis, about 101 dynasty candidates, or candidates who came from political families, were given tickets, and 55 dynasts won, right? And in the Mahayuti, there were about out of the 57 tickets given to dynasty candidates by the Mahayuti, 42 won. So their strike rate was 73%, around 73%. In fact, in the Mahayuti, it was about one third of the candidates, dynasty candidates, propped up by the Maha Vikas Aghadi. Only 13 won. So the Maha Vikas Aghadi's dynasty candidates were rejected, but that doesn't mean the rejection uh, of dynasty candidates. And in fact, even in cases like, let me just give an example of one case, which is of Sangamner, which is a Congress veteran, Balasaheb Thorat, who lost after 8 consecutive wins, right? In that, and Balasaheb Thorat is very interestingly. There is a very beautiful analogy given in this book by Vijay Chormare, who talks about how the intricate family relations of Maharashtra politics works. And while Balasaheb Thorat was defeated, the person who defeated him, a son of a farmer, he comes from the BJP. I think his name is Amol Khatal, and he could do it possibly, and he could, he could win this election only by the support of another dynasty in the neighboring constituency of Ahmednagar, which is VK Patil. So apparently, it was VK Patil's revenge of his son's loss in the Lok Sabha election, which enabled this kind of defeat of another one dynasty, right? So I mean, the idea that a lot of the narratives came out because Balasaheb Thorat has lost, or because Prithviraj Chavan has lost. So again, an example of Prithviraj Chavan's loss in Karad. It is not because he's being defeated by somebody else. He's being defeated by Atul Bhosle, who is a BJP leader and who is also part of the Mohite Patil, family of politics. And again, domination over the same resources of sugar cooperatives and education institutes, medical colleges, and all those. That has become a kind of a dominant part of Maharashtra's politics. And why that is, and let me come to that, because of the kind of classification or the segregation of economy in Maharashtra. And again, when we look at Maharashtra, of course, Maharashtra is not just one state. I mean, everybody, I think, has been, discussing that also, probably, that in many of the post-election analysis, that the regional variations are very important. What this victory has done for the BJP is that it has kind of leveled that regional differences in the sense of its popularity or in the sense of its electoral support. That BJP has been consistently getting over 100 seats since 2014 onward. So that is something which is important, and it has also grown across the different regions. So while in the first election, when BJP in 2014, when it started growing over 100% and emerging as the dominant political party in Maharashtra, it started with its strong areas of northern Maharashtra and eastern Vidarbha, and also taking Mumbai, Thane, and that urban belt. But now, at least in 2024, we can see that the BJP has grown uniformly across. So it has even won seats in the Konkan area. It has won seats in Western Maharashtra. It has also won seats in Marathwada. And that is where the point that Girish was making earlier, that BJP's ability to use its allies for effective vote transfer has been something, and it is something to be seen whether the BJP's growth in Marathwada is at the cost of the Shiv Sena, and whether BJP's growth in Western Maharashtra will be at the cost of NCP, because NCP is still largely a Western Maharashtra party, whether no matter how many divisions that, how many splits happen. So that is something that is important to understand, that why are these regional differences there? Because the economy of Vidarbha is very different from the economy of Mumbai, Thane, or even North Maharashtra, or even Western Maharashtra. And I think now, with the kind of mandate or the kind of sweep that BJP has, or the kind of domination that BJP has, it will be after Yashwantrao Chavan's ministership, or that kind of a strong strength that the Congress had in the 60s and the 70s. This is the kind of strength that BJP is having, as in terms of a complete domination of not only electoral support or not only political power, but also the political economy, with its dynasts, with its local political control over the local levels of political economy. And that will allow us to see that what BJP does with this kind of a long-term domination, in which has not yet been enjoyed. Because even if we see the 2004 to 1999 to 2014 Congress NCP governments, the NCP was dominant in some places, the Congress was dominant in some places, and they had different controls over the political economy. So the political economy control was divided between different parties. But with this kind of control that BJP has exerted and able to establish in this election, and mind you, again, I'm emphasizing on this point because this is the third election consecutively in which BJP has got above 100 seats in Maharashtra, which is a remarkable achievement, right? And a lot of factors will go into, whether it is the RSS in the, kind of a paternal role, or the organization acumen and other things on the ground, the communal polarization, or the cash on roads. A lot of things will happen, but I'm talking about a more structural change which will happen eventually, is that BJP will be able to establish itself as the hegemonic party in Maharashtra, which I think Suhas Palshikar has also called as the establishment of the party society model in Maharashtra, which the BJP will now enjoy. And that is something which will be, at least till now, we don't see that this is something new that is happening, but BJP is replacing that kind of Congress system which existed in Maharashtra. So that's one point which I wanted to say. Of course, this election has also led to some other important things. And I think in that point, the OBC mobilization was very important. At least during my fieldwork in Marathwada, I could see that the BJP has actually made concerted efforts to, make outreach to micro OBC communities. I attended some of those meetings. Thankfully, I was not thrown out from the meetings. probably because I was not a journalist, so they could trust still a little bit about the academic. But then the point is that I could see that the candidates were reaching out to small communities like the Golewar community or the Olewar community, and having these community-specific Karyakarta meetings, which was very important, and also the amplification in the social media. One thing which probably the Maha Aghadi missed was their over dependence on one caste, which I have also seen in Haryana. And I'm like, it also appalls me that how the same party could do the same mistake in the span of 2 months, 3 months, right? So there is no learning, right? The point that I spoke to the social media campaign managers in Nanded district, and they said that for every 100 social media accounts that talks about the Maratha issue and the Maratha reservations and all of that, there are only about 2 to 3 OBC, because they are not able to put or project that kind of presence, and the dominant caste narrative always flies more, is amplified more, and that's the same thing that we saw in the case of the Jat. And that same, while that was happening in the social media, and probably it seems to me, I don't want to bash the Congress, because that's also a very easy thing to do, but while the Congress was or the Ghadi was contesting a battle on the social media, but the real election was being fought on the ground, and which was actually about whether it is the government policy of organizing micro OBC communities into these development corporations. There were about 13 development corporations looking after the Lingayat community, which is such a big voting, big population. And I saw that there were people from Western Maharashtra who were campaigning in Parbhani and in Bid for the Lingayat community candidates, right? That cross linkage from across regions, because in Western Maharashtra, the Lingayats have a dominant presence. So these kind of micro factors, or these kind of other, very localized factors, which were very much taken into consideration in the entire electoral apparatus that we saw. While everything is getting swept under the carpet of the Ladki Behna scheme and other things. But I think these kind of small micro strategies, which were constituency specific or region specific, at least by the BJP, they or the Mahayuti, also played an important role. And coming back to the Ladki Behna Yojana, I think that is important to understand, because the success or the acceptance of Ladki Behna also points to the idea that agrarian distress is very real, right? Because the husband is not getting the price of, the family is not getting income in terms of the soybean sale, or in terms of remuneration for the crops. Therefore, they are signing up to the Ladki Behna, and definitely they are, that is why it is so many people are signing up to it, and so many people are getting the benefits of that. And I think definitely it also doesn't mean that BJP can look away from the agrarian distress that is compelling, and that is an important economic issue. And of course, I think the fiscal distress situations that Girish had pointed out will be definitely a very much concern. In fact, that is what probably is also leading to some kind of reportage that the BJP might reconsider the kind of disbursement that is happening under these kind of schemes. That's one thing. And probably what I wanted to also look at was one last point about the professionalization of election campaigns. I think that is also something which emerged very clearly, or very, prevalently in this election, that I could see that, whether it is, the packaging of Eknath Shinde and, this company called Showtime Consulting, which was given the credit for that, and or the Design Box company, which is giving the credit for Ajit Pawar's campaign and the Pink campaign, and suddenly making Ajit Pawar like the kind of the symbol of women empowerment in all its pink glory. And I think even while these were happening at the large scale at the state level, but even in the constituency specific, I actually came across many small time political consultants, or small political consultants who were actually being hired by individual candidates. And that also points to this idea of the cash rich or the kind of use of resources which are being put into these kind of elections. Because again, it's a very concerning kind of outcome, that even with such a massive mandate, if you look at the age representation in the MLAs, in the incoming MLAs of Maharashtra, we see that around 35, around 63% of the population of the state is below 35 years of age, whereas their representation in the MLAs is only 3.5%. So once again, my point that the usage of resources, the ability of dynasties to maintain control or maintain their stranglehold on the political economy of areas, and also the exchange of political elites, the swapping or the switching of political elites. These are also creating very huge, barriers, entry barriers to politics for young people to enter. One of the things which I, noticed in speaking with many Karyakartas was the lack of student politics in Maharashtra, and how student politics has been completely, obliterated. And so therefore we find that people are joining politics, but we also find, and that's again a cyclical issue, that because party fragmentation is happening, again people are getting these kind of karyakartas not from the party but from the personality or from the patronage structures which we talked about. And because of that, party organization is not being emphasized. One of the outcomes we see that Congress is completely dilapidated, or even NCP, and that is having a kind of an effect on who gets to contest elections also.
I think we might have lost Sarthak. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's okay. Why don't we Sarthak, can you hear me? Well, he's still there, but I guess he's probably suffering from a dodgy connection. Okay, I think we can move into the Q&A section, because I think Sarthak has probably covered most of his points, and we've got some questions sort of coming in from the audience. So maybe I'll sort of address or pose some of these questions, and maybe also add a couple of mine to those questions. So there's one question that has come regarding the the women direct benefit transfer beneficiary schemes, and is that the way forward in future? This is something, of course, Girish talked about, and so it's been seen earlier, and whether of course in MP, also in Jharkhand, we've seen it earlier, before, as Girish mentioned, in West Bengal and Tamil Nadu. And is this really the way going forward? And what I just wanted to sort of add to that question before moving to the others is there some sort of legitimacy that comes with making some of these schemes women-centric? So does that in a way sort of distinguish it from what the Prime Minister had famously called the reverie or the freebie culture? So is there something that if it's targeted at women, does that sort of give it a degree of legitimacy, vis-a-vis, what is, in a sense, is there a sort of significant difference between sort of the Labati culture, which Girish talked about, and the so-called reverie culture that the Prime Minister has mentioned? So maybe there's, Girish, do you want to sort of address that? And maybe we can then, if Mansi has something to add, because I think I don't see Sarthak anymore, so hopefully he'll be able to come back in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, there is nothing larger picture other than winning elections. Had that been the case, I mean, there would have been equal representation for women candidates. It's not. I mean, there are no women MLAs and MPs, not even said 15-20%, forget 33%, which is recommended. So it is nothing but buying votes, to put it crudely, and truly. So I don't see any other reason. I mean, it's like currently in vogue to pay women to get votes, and that is happening. It's nothing but patronizing attitude of this political parties, and that's why we also had reaction in article. If we are so concerned about women, Bahina, then why don't have them in a ministry or in the legislature? But that's not the case.
Right. Mansi, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so unfortunately, what this election has shown is that freebies work. That is the unfortunate norm that has been set in this election. And going forward, how is it? How are states going to then manage their finances? Because Maharashtra finances are not in as terrible a condition as some other
Punjab,
states.
Punjab,
So
yeah.
if you look at the projected fiscal deficit for this year was 2.59%, and according to the 15 Finance Commission, we can go up to 3% of GSDP. Our projected debt levels were 18.25 or 5%. As per the 15 Finance Commission, you can go up to 25% of GSDP. Of course, those numbers will change because a lot more decisions were taken after the budget was announced in the subsequent string of cabinet meetings that the Mahayuti government had. So the revised estimates we'll only know in February. But I was discussing this with one bureaucrat from the finance department, and his way of looking at it was you have some headroom to spend. If you're using most of that and the government is defining its priority of using most of that on welfare schemes, then you have to think of innovative ways to finance other things like your um, road projects, infrastructure creation, creation of any kind of assets. Then the government will have to look at innovative measures like selling its land or going in for more public-private partnership projects. So it kind of creates a question on, and if you look at a Ladli Bahin scheme alone, the projected was, of course, that will change now with the 2100 crore, but the projected expenditure on it was about 48,000 crore annually. Put that in perspective of the amount of capex that they had slotted for this year, which was 90,000 crore. Half the amount that you plan to spend on your capital expenditure, you're spending on a welfare scheme. It really
Correct.
creates a question mark to where we are now going as a state, and how will you prioritize infrastructure creation, asset creation then?
Right. Yeah. So these are all very serious questions. Glad that Sathak is back. I think the Wi-Fi had crashed on campus. I heard from.
Wi-Fi crashed in the campus.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you're using a hotspot, I assume, right? So,
Yes. Yeah, I am actually back from my mobile. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So there was a related question before I move on to the other issues. On the questions on why did the handouts work in the assembly elections, but not so much in the Lok Sabha elections?
Is it to me?
No, any one of you.
So the handouts were largely came as a consequence of the Lok Sabha election results. So the handouts were also, there have been many aspersions or doubts cast on the role of the election commission. But one thing which really worked in favor of the Mahayuti also is the timing of the election, that segregation of this election from the Haryana election. So this separation rather. So the extended time period that they got, so the Ladki Behna scheme was rolled out, I think, in July, and with the 3 installments plus the bonus amount, and plus the amount of the 3 cylinders also. One cylinder's amount was also there. So about 7,500 to 8,000 rupees was deposited directly to the bank account of about 2.26 crore women. So this much was done within the span of 3 months. So that kind of really worked in favor of the incumbent government, because, and again, I think this is probably Mansi or Girish would be able to say it better, but I think there were over 100 GRs signed within this in a short period, right? Which talked about the development corporations and all of these kind of.
Yeah, the GRs were many more, about 100 cabinet decisions alone. The number of GRs went into over 2,000 just in the last month or so.
Corporations 19 corporations were formed, including one for the rich Jain community, except Brahmin.
Jain community also,
yes. No, there was one for Brahmins also, one for Brahmins, one for Rajputs, one for Jains. and economic development cooperation. So
And there is no single rupee allocation. It is
yeah,
expected to be 50 crore per corporation, but government doesn't have money. But coming back to this point, I mean, you said about why it is more uh, in assembly. The answer is actually it's geographical. It's much more easier to manage in assembly than the parliament. It's focused. You know the group who is going to be beneficiary and who can be from our side. For a parliamentary constituency, it's huge. So the handouts work more in state assemblies than in parliament.
Right. So I guess that the targets are far more clearly defined. Right. So just to move on from
Point one more. I think the nature of these handouts are also becoming very important in the sense of the credit claiming. So just the handouts are not really working, but it has to come with the on the back of a personality of the kind of a CM, or like Nitish Kumar did that in Bihar
Like,
successfully. Even Naveen Patnaik could do it for such a long period in Odisha. Mamata Banerjee has done. So it's also the kind of, and that is why it is also becoming such an important stalemate kind of a situation, or situation of negotiations, that despite having this kind of majority, the BJP is not able to completely go out with its own choice of the chief minister, because the central image of the chief minister, who is also the seen as the person who's giving out these benefits. So that's also important aspect of these handouts.
the personalization of these schemes, right?
Yes.
I think Modi too had, Prime Minister Modi too had successfully done in past elections.
Yeah.
So we have a few other questions just to move on from this, very interesting and provocative topic of, these direct cash transfer, welfare benefits, etc. So there is a question on the Lok Sabha election. There was no, the choice. There was no choice. No doubt that the choice was between, whether Modi would be the prime minister or not. So the question is related to Maharashtra: is to what extent did the fact that Shinde as well as Ajit Pawar may have some voice in the government, in addition to the BJP, explain differences between national and state election results? So can you think of them
yeah.
as vote catchers more
Yes.
so at state level than national level, and why?
Yes, one thing I would like to add. I mean, kind of a clarification. There was no Modi in the election. First, we have to be very clear about it. Modi was not the face. Modi was not the issue, and Modi was not the lead campaigner. Even BJP didn't try. Had it tried, it would have had in fact, adversary or negative impact, like what they did in Haryana. Modi was not even on the posters. So it was purely regional. And what Sarthak said, it's very important to understand and Manasi reported about the small OBC group. There have been something like 330 meetings in 4 months. You can imagine the groundwork BJP created, and thanks to RSS, basically small groups, very small meetings, very effective meetings, bringing them into the BJP fold. Along with welfareism of creating women's hostel for certain communities in district headquarters, that is also it's under the radar, but that's very effective. So these two things have worked, and in state elections, always the bonding is easy. It's very close. I mean, the person next door is your Vidhayak kind of a leader. So it is much easier. Parliament, it wasn't, and Parliament overwhelmingly the issue was the 400 plus, 400 par, and the arrogance of the ruling combined. This was not the case in Maharashtra, and BJP's success lies in this mobilization of OBCs, and what he said, it's actually correct. How can Congress but that's Congress. That's what it is, Congress. I mean, two mistakes in two. It has amazing ability to repeat its mistakes. And actually, it is the case. It was evident the way BJP started mobilizing after parliament elections. There's this OBC mobilization, and it actually proved correct.
Right. And there's a sort of rider to that issue. Do you want
In a
to?
lighter vein, somebody said that Congress has this amazing ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Ah.
Much as the Indian team of in the past used to, cricket teams to do. But so there's a rider to this, question of, what, people like Shinde and Ajit Pawar bring to the table. So so the question is, what do each of them bring to the table of Mahayuti, as regards to going
No, I
forward?
think it's very charitable way of looking at what they bring to the table. That the real answer is that they basically slash Pawars and Thackerays. I mean, the neutralizing aspect. See, it's not BJP's love for them, Shinde, or I mean, they were used as a weapon to. I mean, they couldn't beat Sharad Pawar. See, Maharashtra BJP's existence is. I mean, the only foundation is anti-Pawarism. Right from 1990, if you look at the history of growth of the BJP in Maharashtra, it's all anti-Pawar. The more they are anti-Pawar, more is the chance of BJP reaching out to a larger audience. So they couldn't beat, despite 3-4 decades of struggle, they couldn't beat Pawar. So that's the easy way out. If you can't beat them, join them. So instead of joining them, they imported Pawar's nephews and Thackeray's right-hand men to beat Thackeray's and Pawar. As simple as that. There is nothing more than that. And this is what I talked about. The way now Shinde will be sidelined. The way now Ajit Pawar will be utilized as long as he toes the BJP line. I mean, there is nothing beyond that actually. And this is what the BJP story or the theory of from Kashmir to Kanyakumari one party rule. This is the reason.
Right. And in a sense, I guess Shinde's and the Ajit Pawar would be in a sense disappointed that the BJP got as many seats as it did. Of course, it kind of cuts down their zone of influence. So any interventions on this, either from Mansi?
To agree with
Actually, Ajit Pawar, Ajit Pawar, as Sir said, yeah, I mean, their utility was neutralizing Sharad Pawar and Uddhav Thackeray, but Ajit Pawar also brings a sort of regional benefit to the BJP, because if you look at the Western Maharashtra seats, BJP also contested fewer seats, gave more to Ajit Pawar's side, but of the 58 Western Maharashtra seats, only 8 have come to the BJP. It has been Ajit Pawar who's been able to neutralize Sharad Pawar and the NCP bastion of Western Maharashtra for the BJP. Similarly, Marathwada, if you look at it, BJP has got 19 out of 46 seats. A large part of the Marathwada seats have also been brought to the Mahayuti stable from Eknath Shinde's Shiv Sena. So as of now, they bring some regional advantages to the BJP where it has not been able to make a sweeping dent like it has in some other regions. But those regional advantages are also by neutralizing their counterparts on the other Shiv Sena and NCP.
Right.
So,
Sharthak, you had
just
something
a
to...
addendum to that point is that many of the candidates from Ajit Pawar and Eknath Shinde's party were actually BJP politicians who were given the symbols
Some of them,
from these
about
parties.
12 of them were
Yeah,
BJP politicians.
yeah, so I mean, even if and so I mean, they really Eknath Shinde can't be really bargaining with MLAs who are actually BJP MLAs, but winning on his
Right.
ticket. So that's one part. But I think larger, I think as a more structural issue, the point about regional parties. So
Yeah.
I think BJP has been able to take advantage is of the fact that much of these regional parties are centered around one family or one personality, and that is how I mean, if you just break that family or if you just create kind of divisions within the family, that's the easiest possible way to split or end that regional party. I think BJP has been able to use this. What kept Congress in power was by keeping or accommodating the interests of these regional powers or the regional satraps, if we call that, and that was what the Congress system is. And whereas what keeps BJP in power is the other way around, which is basically by eating up or gobbling up these kind of regional sectors. So there are two different ways of doing politics that we have seen, but the result is same, which is more or less a kind of hegemonic dominance, which we saw in the Congress phase, and now we are actually seeing in the fourth party system, which we call is now.
Right. Okay. So there's nothing more to add on that issue. There's the question on the OBC consolidation. So the Congress and allies, most prominently to the caste census, have attempted to frame policies that reach out to less dominant OBCs. But in both Maharashtra and Haryana, we see that it hasn't gone very well. Why is this so? Is it a lack of appeal for what is being proposed, or is it a lack of good leaders or networks in those communities, or is it the relative media as well as party cadre?
I find Congress taking up this OBC and the caste census issue is good for TV channel debates. What BJP has done that is actually on the ground. It has built networks in among the OBC communities, and it's not new. I mean, this is actually going to backfire on Congress because BJP's OBC strategy dates back to something like 1980s when one of the ideologues called Vasantarao Bhagwat, he devised a strategy called Madhav, where Mari, Dhangar, and Manzaris, three dominant OBC communities, were brought into the BJP fold. And since then, all over India, BJP has followed that part, right from Modi to Kalyan Singh to, you name Kalyan Singh, Uma Bharti, and Gopinath Munde. Almost all of the big leaders are OBCs. So Congress, I don't know why they are tom-tomming this particular point. This is like the constitution, flashing constitution in state assembly elections somewhere in Gadchiroli, has nothing to do with the ground connect, And I find this is completely, I mean, a self-goal for the Congress.
Right. Any interventions on this question of OBC consolidation from either Mansi or Shatap?
So
I
one
think
thing,
go ahead.
yeah, I think, I mean, the point that I already made, perhaps not to sound repetitive, but the point that this OBC consolidation, while this was happening on the ground, the Congress put their eggs in the Maratha reservation basket. So, I mean, and we have to understand that, I mean, the Maratha reservation issue doesn't hold kind of congruence beyond certain sections of Marathwada, because in Vidarbha, the Maratha is the Maratha Kunbi. So it is actually, they are actually almost scared of their OBC reservations getting away, by being taken away by the Maratha. And in the western Maharashtra, it is the rich Maratha which is favoring, the kind of entrenched political elites more. So I mean, the Congress really was not able to understand, or I don't know what actually came upon them, that they really let that narrative go more with the dominant, the Maratha reservation issue. And I think that kind of backfired in a big way.
It also shows the disconnect, but Congress is ignoring. Why I'm saying the disconnect? Because the Hindu militarization of Maratha community is being completely ignored.
Yes, absolutely. And this brings in this very important gentleman called Bhide Guruji.
Yeah.
I noticed, I spoke with the Shiv Pratishthan Hindustan members in Nanded and all, and they are actually doing this kind of, reenactment of all the Muhims.
Actually, yeah.
Dressing up like the
correct.
Into the Western Maharashtra.
The thought that Hinduism or the Hindutva works only in Brahmins, and it's gone. It's no more there. It's I mean, many communities have there is a very large scale indoctrination, already happened. So there is no point in ignoring this aspect, I feel.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this elsewhere in northern India, sort of also creating, in a sense, these icons, right? In Uttar Pradesh, someone like Sohail Dev, or others elsewhere. So sort of resurrecting or bringing out an icon, then mobilizing, your sort of support around those icons or issues.
One point, if I can, Ronojoy, one point is actually very much important linked to this point that Girish brought out. It's also why the reason that the idea of this threat of the Marathi Asmita or the business from Maharashtra going to the Gujarat did not work that much, because also we have to understand that Maharashtra Asmita is not just regionally situated, right? So historically speaking, also the Shiv Sena, while in the literature we talk about Shiv Sena as a nativist party which grew as a nativist issues and everything, but Shiv Sena managed electoral success only when it talked about the Hindutva issue, right? So the Maharashtrian identity or the Maharashtra identity, Maharashtra Asmita, is also thinking about a pan-national or the national importance, or to think. I mean, so even if we look at the idea of Shivaji, I mean, he is seen as a national leader and not just as somebody who is a Maharashtrian leader or limited to Maharashtra, right? And that is something to be understood, and probably the BJP has been able to understand that. While actually we see that even Sharad Pawar, even now, he's talking about the legacy of Phule, Ambedkar, and Shahu Maharaj, right? And this is something also important to understand, that while Sharad Pawar or Uddhav Thackeray and Congress are talking about issues or icons which are seen limited to the regional perspective. I'm not saying that Ambedkar is limited to the regional perspective, but definitely the way in which they are being brought down or they are being talked about in the discourse. Whereas the other imagination is about Shivaji, and as somebody who is not just an icon of Maharashtra, but also about the larger pan-Indian nation, which is that imagination that they are kind of creating. So that's also, I think, some historical understanding of what the Maharashtra Smita is also important to be talked about in this issue.
Of course, the figure of Shivaji and the mobilization around has a very long history, right? So, as not just a Maratha figure, but a national sort of Hindu figure.
Yeah, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj.
No, and just one small correction. You said Hindu. This is actually BJP is trying to portray Shivaji as a Hindu leader.
Right.
They're trying to appropriate the Hindu. Shivaji never had this Hindu thing. 90% of his battles were fought against Hindus. Number one. Number two, he called himself his empire as a Hindavi Swaraj. So what does it mean? It's a native. It's indigenous one, not Hindu one. So this is completely. Actually, this is what the story BJP likes to showcase. I mean, the original or first Hindu leader. Shivaji was never a Hindu. His letters to his officials, his army chief was Muslim. So there are many things that can be cited.
Right. Okay, so it's kind of running out of time, and we don't have any more specific questions from the audience. So just a couple of things maybe to kind of round off the discussion, and which hasn't been sort of touched on in the discussion section, is the point about dynasties and this whole narrative of end of dynasty. Because this is not just in Maharashtra. Everywhere. Maharashtra, as Sarthak mentioned, is also peculiar because you don't have one kind of overarching dynasty of several mini dynasties, right? Which is kind of unusual. Other states too do have, but not to the extent. So, you want to kind of any other thoughts from either Girish or?
It's good for the media. Actually, it doesn't work that way. I mean, in Indian context, there is a saying in "Gaane wale ka ladka sur mein rota hai." So that is seen. It is part of the culture, And when you have Kennedys there in the US, I mean, does it matter? This issue, I don't think, and BJP will be the number one party having so many candidates or MLAs from political dinners. So I don't think there is much to add or analyze or discuss on that.
And actually, having interacted with a number of these so-called dynasts, I mean, some of them they're very smart. They've seen politics from close quarters. They have been aware of political strategies. Meetings have happened at their place, their house. So, I mean, they've been groomed in that particular political philosophy. So, if they want to consider, politics as their profession, then why not? The problem starts when dynasts are pushed out of merit, overlooking others within the party who may not have had a dynastic legacy within politics. That is where the problem begins. And which is also there in Maharashtra, but there's also the other side in Maharashtra where politicians have also earned their right to contest elections, having worked from the ground to up.
Right. Atak, do you want to add anything further, or you've kind of had your say when you were?
I mean, it is not something. I mean, of course, I mean, my argument is basically that it affects the way in which party organizations are formed. And if karyakartas, whom I have spoken to many karyakartas, they do not find, some kind of reward in terms of political. Because see, I mean, a karyakarta will not always want to be a karyakarta. They also have a kind of a dynamic interest in politics, and if that dynamic interest or if those kind of accommodation are not being fulfilled, there is some kind of a decay or disgruntlement in party organizations. And of course, that leads to a more kind of transactional politics. And ultimately, what happens is that kind of ends up increasing the costs of elections, right? And the point about why are elections so costly in India, and it has something to do with I mean, of course, politicians who are like have been seeing these kind of political meetings and political deal making and everything from childhood and from very early age will have an advantage. But the point is that are the entry points, are the entry barriers then having some kind of adverse effect on the quality of representatives, right? And the rising gap, right, between the representatives and those who are represented, that is something to
Yeah.
be worried about in the larger context, right? Not just one election.
Actually, this is the vital point. But the problem is that the BJP are raising this issue, and simultaneously, let's say, for example, Narayan Rane, his two sons contested from two different parties.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so you have
So
three
my
members.
point is, this is ideology agnostic. My point is, this is ideology agnostic, and BJP emerging as a new alternative doesn't mean that it has changed politics in Maharashtra. Right?
And in fact, this was the party that used to say one family, one ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, and again, the constituency that I come from in Navi Mumbai, that MLA his father was a Congress MP. He is the BJP MLA, and he has earned like his assets have grown 300%. So it was 150 crore in the last election, and this election is the second richest MLA in Maharashtra. So just imagine, and this is a political family which is able to get all the infrastructure contracts and all the airport deals and everything. So I'm just saying that this is creating certain kind of question marks on the quality of democracy, right? And is democracy really representative in nature or not? That's the point.
That's, of course, a large question which we could have an entire seminar or seminars on, the quality of representatives and the quality of democracy. Unfortunately, we don't have too much time. So there's another issue just I wanted to quickly touch on before we perhaps wind up is, what Shatak talked about, the cooperative societies. So when we talk of Maharashtra, one of the peculiarities of Maharashtra politics is we talk about cooperatives and their role in the rise of someone, people like leaders like Sharad Pawar. So how do you see the transformation of these cooperative societies? Are they still as powerful as they were, or have their wings been clipped, or have they been kind of co-opted? Any thoughts on that?
I can begin, and then maybe others can add in, maybe, and maybe correct me also. So I think, of course, the cooperative, the centrality of cooperative societies in the politics of the district is not as much as it used to be earlier, probably in the 70s and the 80s, and that is because of the stagnation of the agrarian economy and the transformation to other modes of economic transformation that has happened. And so therefore the centrality of the cooperatives are not as it used to be. But still, like there are cooperatives which have been now which were loss making, and which have been now converted into private sugar mills, and that has been co-opted by the political families. So I mean, the cooperative in sugar mills have now converted into been made into, some of them of course have been made into private sugar mills. So but they are still an important source of the patronage in the rural areas. and not just a cooperative, but the cooperative also is linked to the district cooperative bank and credit societies, which are again creating multiple levels of parallel structures of power in the district, in which certain many different kind of political ambitions can be accommodated, and that is how leaders or dynasty politicians actually function. So one thing which actually is very important to understand, that I mean, some analysts told me in the rural belt that a successful politician is not the one who's wealthy by himself, but the one who is able to mobilize wealth, or the one who is able to mobilize resources. So cooperative institutions or education institutions and other kind of industries create or increase that ability of politicians to mobilize resources whenever they need it. And I think that is something which is not completely changed in the character of Maharashtra politics. Maybe others.
And cooperative also has urban phase, which is not actually seen. When we say cooperative, we talk about cooperative sugar mills and dairies, but there is a huge banking sector which is largest in the country with cooperative banks. And that is there is very interesting bifurcation. All the profit making urban cooperative bank. It's a 3-tier structure: the urban cooperative bank, district cooperative bank, and the societies. All the profit-making urban cooperative banks are with the RSS and the BJP. The simple reason being that 1948, after Gandhi's assassination, there was no one who was willing to lend to Brahmins. So Brahmins came in Western Maharashtra, in Karad and Sangli region. They came and they set up their own bank. So all the big profit-making urban cooperative banks are with BJP and RSS. I mean, that's given. I mean, there is not an exception we can find on that. So there is one rural phase, but urban cooperative is also important. And after appointing or setting up cooperative ministry under Mr. Amit Shah, the whole idea is to penetrate the rural cooperative banking also, and which is now seen happening.
Right, yeah, that's exactly interesting, an important point. So I guess we are almost out of time. So if no further, Nancy, did you have any intervention to make? No, on this issue, on cooperative?
No, that basically sums it up. And you can also see within the government also, I mean, BJP from its 2014 to 2019 when it was in power, and then since 2022, especially from 2014 to 2019, there were a lot of norms that the cooperation department of the state government changed to ensure greater government control in these cooperative institutions, which was basically seen as a move to hurt Congress and BJP controlled cooperatives. Then there's also there's one proposal that I think came up post 2022 after the MVA government fell. There's a proposal to set up like an asset reconstruction sort of a institution within the government, a government backed institution, which will look at all government backed institutions and cooperatives, and the sick, the financially weaker ones. It will try and acquire these assets and work exactly like an asset reconstruction company, improve the health of these assets and then sell them, which was also seen as a move by the Congress and NCP leaders to because the primary look at cooperatives which are not doing too well. So that has not yet fully functional, but you can see a lot of these moves which have ensured greater government interference in the rural cooperatives.
Okay, I think on that note, we've almost run out of time. That was an extremely engaging and interesting discussion, and we could have gone on, but I will unfortunately have to call it a day. So our thanks to all the panelists for kindly taking the time to participate in the discussion. Our thanks also to the audience who've stuck around till the end. So could we have a virtual round of applause for the panelists? And hopefully we'll be able to again organize something where we could bring all of you in. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ramajan. And thank you. It was great listening to you, Mansi and Girish. Thank you.
Absolutely. Same here. Thank you.